Hello, good afternoon and welcome to News Today on your Joy News channel here on Multi TV. Coming up, possibility of the Electoral Commission executing a Supreme Court directive to furnish it with details of persons who registered onto the roll with NHIS cars not likely, as Kodeo alleges that the registration documents have been destroyed by the country's electoral body. Former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan urges speedy resolution of voters' register controversy to reduce heightening political tension in the country. And PPP flag bearer Dr. Papakwe Sindom describes recent promises by the NDC and NPP as mere rhetorics aimed at deceiving the electorate. Details including business, sports, entertainment, as well as international updates all coming up in the next hour here on News Today. Stay with us. My name is Kwabena Chenchehineboati. Many thanks for joining us here on News Today. To our very first story this hour, and former UN Secretary General Kofi Annan is calling for a speedy resolution of the voters' register controversy to reduce heightening political tension in the country. Speaking at the 12th CDD Ghana Continua Kwemu lecture, Kofi Annan called on the Electoral Commission to do more to reduce the tension building up in the country's political atmosphere ahead of the November polls.
I thought we had all understood and accepted that democracy is, to quote Winston Churchill, the worst form of government except for all the others. I'm afraid those hopeful, exciting days are behind. Today, one hears more and more politicians and pundits, as well as ordinary people, speak about shortcomings of democracy and the need for more authoritative leadership. The problem is that authoritative leadership can be a slippery slope towards authoritarian leadership. In this worrying international environment, many of our own African leaders are tempted to revert to the bad old days. So let me be very clear about this. Democracy is crucial for Africa's progress. In fact, as the title of this lecture suggests, democracy is a prerequisite for Africa's progress. Some still argue that enlightened authoritarian leadership is more conducive to economic development, drawing on a familiar but a short list of examples. The short list is because enlightened leaders are few and far between, whether in democratic or authoritarian systems. But when you entrust all power to one person, and he or she proves not to be as enlightened as you had hoped, can you hold that leader to account or get him or her out of the office? And I must say it's often he. They are the ones who create our problems. Even strong men who start out with good intentions seldom keep them. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, as Lord Acton pointed out. Africa knows this from experience. After a promising start at independence, most of the continent suffered under incompetent dictatorships for decades. The result was not only a dismal economic record, but also widespread human rights abuses, egregious corruption, and absence of rule of law. In fact, the evidence suggests that by and large, democracy is conducive to economic development. Professor Amartya Sen famously made the point that the academic debate on the relative merits of authoritarianism and dictatorship for economic growth obfuscates the fact that democracy is progress in and of itself, because freedom is development too. Ghana has thrived under democracy since it was reintroduced, and our society, as well as our economy, has thrived as a result. We must never stop reminding ourselves of that fact. Yes, our country has its problems, but all countries have problems. But democracies always tend to look worse than they are because the media and civil society magnify their problems, whereas dictatorships suppress information about their problems. In the long run, however, criticism and public debate should lead to reform, which makes democracies resilient, while dictatorships are fundamentally brittle. This reminds me of Aesop's fable of the oak and the reed. The oak looks strong, but cannot bend, and so it gets knocked over by a storm, whereas the reed looks weak, but because it can bend with the wind, it survives the storm. Today, almost every leader claims to govern by democratic principles, and governments organize periodic elections, most of which are open and fair. But there are many leaders and regimes who manipulate the system to make sure they win. In other words, rather than impose their rule through brute force, these leaders are tempted to subvert the legal and democratic framework. It is ruled by law rather than rule of law. Regimes have developed a multitude of methods, some more subtle than others, to ensure that the level playing fields are limited to sports competitions only. This may work in the short run, but it is a dangerous strategy in the long run, for democracies without credible elections are no democracies at all. As such, they cannot provide societies with the feedback loops and resilience that characterize genuine democracy. We must remember that elections are a mechanism for the arbitration of political rivalries and peaceful and democratic rotation of leadership. If political rivals and their supporters do not believe the electoral process to be free and fair, then they will ultimately resort to less peaceful means to change political direction. We must not let the street take the place of the ballot box, but that requires credible elections. For elections to be credible, it will have to meet three criteria: inclusiveness, transparency, accountability, to build confidence amongst the electorates and to earn the trust of the public.
Still staying with some election-related issues and furnishing the Supreme Court with information of persons who registered onto the country's roll with national health insurance cards may prove to be a daunting task for the country's electoral body. This is because several of the registration documents used in the process have been destroyed. Now, that's the position of the National Coordinator of the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, Kofi Annan, who maintains that the Electoral Commission will not be able to execute the Supreme Court's directive. Now, the Supreme Court yesterday gave the EC a one-week ultimatum to furnish it with a full list of persons who registered with the National Health Insurance Scheme card as a form of identification during the registration process. Kodeo, however, believes the EC will not be able to do that. National Coordinator Annan has been telling us why on News Desk.
If you had been listening to a lot of people, especially Kodeo, for example, was always saying that there was a need for the commission to come out with a roadmap to talk about the way this register was going to be cleaned. You know, we have been drumming and talking about this thing for a very long time. And we in Kodeo are happy that at least there's this rule of law thing that has come to stay, or it's been established firmly. It really is going to strengthen our democracy when we have the rule of law working. The Supreme Court is the Supreme Court of the land. And they have come out to say and giving out the orders or instructions as to how best this thing ought to be done. So I think it's better for the commission to go strictly according to what they've asked them to do. The only problem that we see is this thing about the timetable, whether these orders, if they are going to be, strictly adhered to, will allow the commission to go about the timetable as they have planned. Because one, they are going to get the names within 1 week, and then I'm sure after that, if everything is in order, they will be asked to go and register the people whose names have been selected. The names will be expunged in the first place.
Okay. And
then, in order not to disenfranchise them, they are saying that they ought to be registered because it was through no fault of theirs. You see, so registration is going to be done, and then an exhibition is going to be done. All this is going to delay the process. But even one thing that I fear, and something that I have been hearing from the grapevine, is the fact that it's not all the districts or the constituencies who have their list that they are supposed to be going through to select. You see, some of them, I'm sure, have either been bent, or they've been thrown away or destroyed or something. You see, so this thing is dicey. I don't know. Maybe the grapevine might be wrong. What is coming from the grapevine might be wrong. But people are saying that the information is not there. The information is not in the first place. It is not even in the database. It is not in the database because it was not a scannable form, or at that time the information was not on a scannable form. So it means that the EC didn't capture it onto the database. So this is going to be a manual thing, if it is even there. So if they don't have the list, if it is not there, I think the best thing and the right thing to do is to tell the Supreme Court that we don't have the list. I'm told that when the Supreme Court sat in the petition, the time this petition was on, they were asked and they said they had the list. You see, but from the grapevine, we are hearing that the list is not there or may not even be complete.
I see.
And why we are saying this is that, this form is not the one that was scanned. If you scan it, you get it straight away into the database. But the information was not provided on the form. So if it was not provided on the form, it means it was not captured.
Okay.
And also, we know that for most of the time when elections are conducted, and the materials that are used, after 1 year when there are no problems, they are all destroyed. You see, so if it happens to be in that category of forms that have been burnt or destroyed, then where will they get the information? But here, I will not conjecture to say anything here. It's the commission that is supposed to be doing this, and they will have to come out and say whether they have it or they don't have it.
All right.
It would be better if they should come out to say they don't have it.
That was the National Coordinator of the Coalition of Domestic Election Observers, Albert Kofi Annan, speaking earlier on News Desk. Still on some politics, and flag bearer of the Progressive People's Party, Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum, says recent promises by NDC and NPP flag bearers are mere rhetoric aimed at deceiving the electorate to vote for them. In a statement, Dr. Papa Kwesi Ndum said the two leaders are only promising what they believe the people want to hear, so they can win.
President John Dramani Mahama, he says he is going to create 1 million jobs again in Ghana. And then Nana Akufo-Addo, he says he is going to build in 4 years 1 factory in every district. Well, it is as if these politicians have not learned any lessons from the past. It can only be a certain period that has arrived. It's campaign season. And so promises, but promises that these politicians know very well they cannot deliver on. And we Ghanaians, we must not sit, we must not just observe, we must not allow people to get away with these empty promises. Yes, we have seen the campaign slogans. We will build 200 SHS schools, free SHS, one-term premium. Now, 1 million jobs, one factory for every district. They know they can get away with it, and they know very well that if they make these promises, empty as they may be, people might believe them, might applaud them, and go and vote for them.
You're watching news today here on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. We are taking a break. We'll be back shortly with some more stories. Don't go away. Many thanks for staying with us here on News Today to some more stories. Now, our UK Prime Minister David Cameron has announced his resignation following Britain's vote to leave the European Union. In a speech given outside Downing Street this morning, Mr. Cameron explained he would step down by October to ensure the country has a strong, determined and committed leadership. The United Kingdom in a referendum on Thursday voted to exit the European Union with a 1.9% difference in the votes. Let's get some perspectives on this now. And British High Commissioner to Ghana, John Benjamin, joins us via Skype now with some more on this. So, sir, many thanks for joining us. First, give us the facts as you have them.
Well, I think everybody has heard the facts now. The vote took place yesterday. It was a really giant exercise in democracy, perhaps the biggest such exercise in our history. In the UK, over 33 million people voted. And we're proud of the fact that we have such a democracy, that we trust people with the really big decisions on questions about arrangements for how we are governed. And the British people voted by roughly 52% to 48%, a 4% difference, to leave the European Union. And that was an instruction by the British people to the British government, and their will must be respected.
What does this mean for the UK?
Well, obviously this morning there are an awful lot of questions which can't be answered immediately, because there's quite a long process ahead of us for negotiating with the European Union the terms on which we cease to be a member, and at the same time define a new relationship with the European Union. The European countries are our friends, our allies, our neighbours. Obviously, we will be seeking a new, very good basis for a relationship going forward, with the UK not being a member. Obviously, there are other political ramifications. You've said yourself that Prime Minister Cameron has announced that he'll be stepping down in perhaps 3 months or so time, in order to make way for a new Prime Minister who will be in charge of negotiating the new arrangements that we'll have to define the relationship between the UK and the European Union. But look, the UK itself continues to be the 5th largest economy in the world. We're the only major developed country which has reached the UN's target of 0.7% of our gross national income going in overseas aid. We're a permanent member of the UN Security Council. We're a member of NATO, of G7, of the G20. None of that is going to change.
What about Ghanaians who live there and may want to visit or live in another European country, but I mean, they were leveraging on the UK's membership of the EU to visit the country? Any implications for them?
Well, first of all, it's important to say that the UK always maintained its own visa regime, even inside the European Union. So we weren't part of, for example, the Schengen visa arrangements. So there's no change to the requirements and arrangements for Ghanaians to apply secure visas for travel to the UK.
Finally, before you go, sir, will this in any way change the way UK relates with Ghana at the governmental level?
No, the UK and Ghana are incredibly close, have a long history together. We were close friends and partners before the UK joined the European Union back in the 1970s, and we will be afterwards. We have a very rich relationship in so many different fields of governmental activity, but also what really makes UK-Ghana relations stand out is the fact that we have so many interpersonal people-to-people relationships between families and friends and companies and so on, cultural links.
Right.
And that's something we intend to strengthen in line with the relations we've had for so many years now.
Mr. Benjamin, many thanks for your time on News Today this afternoon. And John Benjamin is High Commissioner to Ghana for the United Kingdom, and he's been speaking to us on the decision by the UK to exit the European Union. Well, just a while ago, the EU released a statement on this issue, and joining me now in studio to tell us more about that statement is Joy News producer Emefa Atiamoa Eli, who joins us now with those details. Emefa, so can you tell us what really this statement says?
Okay, essentially they are saying they respect the decision of the UK to exit the EU, though regretful. They respect their decision. Let me read the statement for purposes of clarity.
Right.
It says, it's a joint statement by the EU President, the EU Parliamentary, and then the EU Council. Okay, so it says that, in effect, in a free, I'm quoting, in a free and democratic process, the British people have expressed their wish to leave the European Union. We regret this decision, but respect it. This is an unprecedented situation, but we are united in our response. We will stand strong and uphold the EU's core values of promoting peace and the well-being of its peoples. The union of 27 member states will continue. The union is the framework of our common political future. We are bound together by history, geography, and common interests, and will develop our cooperation on this basis. Together, we will address our common challenge to generate growth, increase prosperity, and ensure a safe and secure environment for our citizens. The institutions will play their full role in this endeavor. We now expect the United Kingdom government to give effect to this decision of the British people as soon as possible. However painful that process may be, that's quite interesting. It also says any delay would unnecessarily prolong uncertainty. We have rules to deal with this in an orderly way. Article 50 of the Treaty on the European Union sets out the procedure to be followed if a member of states decides to leave the European Union. We stand ready to launch negotiations swiftly with the United Kingdom regarding the terms and conditions of its withdrawal from the European Union.
Okay.
So
right.
That is what they are saying.
Basically, that's what the
essentially.
statement says. Okay. Emefa, many thanks for that update. And that was Johnny's producer, Emefa Atiamoa Eli, bringing us the extracts of that statement. Remember, there's more on this on our news and news analysis program, The Pulse, which airs at 3 p.m. on the same channel. But away from that now, and shortage of drugs. Johnny just learned of shortage of drugs at the infirmary of the Sunyani prisons. The situation, we understand, is impacting the quality of care of inmates. In the studio to help us understand the situation is Public Relations Officer of the Prison Service, DSP Vitalis Aye, and he's now joined me in studio with some more on this. So Vitalis, many thanks for joining us. So why are we having such a situation in our prisons?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to your cherished viewers. The prisons, as we know, could be anybody's potential and second home. We have a lot of challenges lately, and we are out there asking people to come to our aid. Drugs alone is not the issue. There are other issues that are in short supply. We are looking at somebody giving 180 pesos for 3 square meals a day. The prison population is larger than what we should have now. We're supposed to have 9,000 capacity prison. We have as many as 15,000 inmates in our prisons across the country. So there's pressure on everything, including basics like drugs and food. So it's not a new story that Sunyani should lack drugs. However, this is the only time also that we have as many as 6,000 inmates hooked onto the National Health Insurance Scheme. So I believe it's the issue of delivery, healthcare delivery coming from the providers. I know there's a timetable for it. So I think as we speak, drugs could be running out, but I believe with time, as the season gets over, the stock could be replenished. And
this situation is not peculiar to just the Sunyani prison. It cuts across, I believe.
Yes, it cuts across. We have a budget that is not that big, and that should take care of all these things we are talking about. If you watched or listened to the Public Accounts Committee sitting last month, this issue came up as to how much the Ghana Prison Service owes our providers, healthcare providers. In Sawam alone was owing so much. They paid part of it. It replicates. It's across the country. We owe, but it's government to government. So we pay small and they continue to treat us. And we keep paying and we keep owing.
So what can be done now, seeing that, well, some interventions have been put in place, like you mentioned, the National Health Insurance Scheme, that policy that is taking care of some prisoners in the country. What more do you think can be done?
We pray that it covers the entire prison system across the country.
So as things stand now, it covers just a select few?
Yes, not all the prisons in the country, but at least about 50% or so is covered. So we pray it covers every prisoner, every inmate in our prisons. And we also pray that the prison should be looked at differently from others outside, because we are very much constrained. These are people who are incarcerated. They don't move out. They are different from those who are out there working and can walk to any pharmacy and get Medicare. Theirs is a difficulty. So we still pray that government is doing its best. They should improve and increase, fast track it, and make sure what is due us comes regularly and fast as well.
Right. Many thanks for joining us in the studio, sir. And DSP Vitalizaya is with the Ghana Prison Service. He's been telling us about the situation as far as health is concerned in the country's prisons. Well, they're calling for some more support, and they will be pushing this very agenda, hoping to bring some help to the many prisoners who need it. You're watching News Today here on your Joy News channel on Multi TV. We're taking another break. When we come back, we'll bring you updates in business. Stay with us.
Now time for some business, and the London stock market plunged in the wake of UK's referendum vote to leave the EU. In the opening minute of trade, the FTSE 100 index fell more than 8% before regaining some grounds by mid-morning. Banks were the hardest hit, with Barclays and RBS falling about 30%, although they later pared to losses to almost about 17% earlier. The pound fell dramatically as the referendum outcome emerged. At one stage, it hit 1.3236, a fall more than 10% and a low not seen since 1985. The Bank of England said it was monitoring development closely and would take all necessary steps to support the monetary stability of England. This is exactly what is coming up. We'll be looking at that in detail on the marketplace as well. And government raised 816 million Ghana cedis from investors through the 5-year bond it issued on Thursday. The Finance Ministry had earlier targeted to raise between 500 million and 1 billion Ghana cedis, but accepted 811 million Ghana cedis. More in the following reports.
About 61% of the bids came from foreign investors, while 39% came from local investors. Government, however, paid an interest of 24.5% on the bond issued. This is the second time this year that government is using the book building approach to issue its bonds instead of the previous plan of using the Bank of Ghana. The deal was arranged by 3 financial institutions, that is Barclays, Stanbic Bank, and Financial House Strategic African Security. The Finance Ministry is planning to use funds raised to finance debts that are maturing and support some projects outlined in the budget. Government is planning to raise about 60 billion Ghana cedis through bonds and treasury bills this year.
So that will be it for business. But there's more business on the marketplace between 1 and 1:30. We'll still be looking at the implications of Brexit on Ghana, especially on our trade and currencies market here, because already gold is actually gaining some momentum on the international market just as on the backdrop of that particular one. My name is John Kojo Amoko. Coming up next is your sports.
It for the news this afternoon. My name is Kwabna Chenche Heneboating. There's more news when you visit www.myjoyonline.com. The marketplace comes up next with John Kujama. Many thanks for your company.